Hey everyone. So with the recent buffs to ranged weapons, they've really started becoming competitive options to melee in terms of damage output. But there's one thing holding back some of our ranged weapons from competing with melee, and that's reloading. One great strength that melee weapons have is their ability to output damage without pause, and that's something that Warframe's gameplay really demands at higher levels. Reloading isn't a big deal in other games because their pace allows for those periodic breaks in action. But in Warframe, enemies tend to spawn in such large masses that you can often find yourself dumping a mag into a wave of enemies, only to meet another before you can finish reloading. Which is why so many players find themselves abusing melee so much. Melee doesn't force you to awkwardly stop for several seconds between fighting groups of enemies. Fortunately for us though, this is a problem that already has a solution, and that's the holster reload mods. Simply put, these mods reload a percentage of our weapons' magazines while we aren't holding them. That means that instead of having to sit and wait for 3 whole seconds to reload your Corinth Prime back up, you can just swap to your sidearm or melee, use that for a couple seconds, then swap back to your primary with it fully loaded. Almost like a proper character action game where you smoothly cycle through your whole arsenal as you fight. Now before you start buying weapon excellence adapters and using your former stockpiles to slap these mods into your favorite weapons, there are a few things to consider first. The first thing to remember is that these aren't going to be necessary for every weapon. Some weapons like the Phantasma or the Axtiletto Prime can reload quickly enough to make these mods pretty unnecessary. Second, some weapons might have magazines that are too small to be able to make efficient use of this, like the Tigress Prime or the Piranha Prime. But this also means that weapons with very large magazines benefit a lot from these mods. Since you're going to be loading 20% of your magazine per second, that means on a weapon like the Quelor, which has a 300 round mag capacity, you're loading 60 rounds per second. So if you've emptied your magazine, you don't even need to fully refill your mag before you can start firing again. You can just bring out your melee weapon by tapping the quick melee button and then aiming down your sights to instantly swap back to your gun with a partially filled mag. And the third thing to consider is that some weapons like the Trumna or the Ignis just can't equip these mods at all. Luckily for us though, there's a way around this. And that's where the Synth mod set comes in. These mods have a set bonus that reload 5% of your holstered weapon's magazine per set mod installed. We're primarily going to be making use of Synth Deconstruct and Fiber, since Charge and Reflex are significantly harder to squeeze onto our builds. Synth Fiber and Deconstruct only cost 2 mod slots from our companions, which is a pretty low price to pay for such a good effect, on top of being useful mods of their own right. With just these mods, we're getting 10% of our mag reloaded on both of our guns while holstered, without even having to spend any extra form or excellence adapters on those guns. This effect also stacks with the holstered reload mods, which means that when you combine one with Synth Fiber and Deconstruct, we can fully reload our weapons in just 3.33 seconds. So now I think you have a pretty good idea of why I love these mods so much. They effectively increase your damage output by letting you stay in the fight for longer, not having to worry about slow, clunky reload times at a pretty minimal cost. But there is one thing I haven't mentioned. A weapon that benefits from the holstered reload effect more than any other weapon in the game. And that's what I'll be talking about in my next video. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I promise you won't have to wait so long for the next one.